Okay, so I'm going to introduce our first speaker, which is Jamie MacDonald, who's very kindly come down from Scotland to speak with us again. Jamie delivered a great presentation in Berlin and brings a really very interesting perspective to how we try and make mind mapping a credible tool, how we introduce it to people, how we position it for other people. So no pressure, Jamie, but Jamie has no useful perspectives at all. And here he is.
Thank you. And just when Jamie comes to the podium, the ice cream comes out. This is torture. Sarah, could you keep on going? I noticed you sneaking out 2 minutes before.
I got it coming.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Jamie MacDonald, as Liam said, glad to be back with Biggerplate. It's good to be here, and my thanks again to the Biggerplate team, Liam and family, and adopted family, for the invite. I thought after the last one you wouldn't invite me back again. But hey ho. It's good to see familiar faces as well. Some MindGenius users in the room as well, which is heartening. And nice to meet new folks as well, of course. I found the morning very interesting, very stimulating, and it's very hard to follow such kind of eloquent speakers. You'll see I'm kind of having a crutch of speaker notes here, which I don't normally do. I don't know why I get so nervous in these things, because I'm normally on my feet doing my thing. But this time, because it's formal, I've got my notes. It's crazy, isn't it? So I've entitled the session A More Effective Way of Working, basically. And what I want to do with that is I would like to consider, if we can, together, some of the blocks and barriers that prevent us as individuals and as part of wider teams to be effective contributors. And we'll come to explore that in just a second, in our day-to-day working environment. So let's kind of adjust the mind to kind of negativity. What are the blocks to being effectiveness? But before that, it's amazing what Google will tell you. The word effective, just so we can frame this, the word effective means an effective employee produces at a high level. That's a kind of definition, if you like. Yeah, I'm sure. You agree with that? Anybody disagree? Okay. Effectiveness, there's a bit of effectiveness. It's the level of results from the actions of employers and managers. And employees and managers who demonstrate effectiveness in the workplace help produce high quality results. So we're in the zone of effectiveness. That's what I'm trying to pitch this. And being an effective contributor. And that's just kind of framing that for us. Sorry if I'm insulting your intelligence, but you know that's I just wanted to set the mind there. And the perspective I want to look at this is the context of business mind mapping software where I'm in. I kind of get and accept, of course, the traditional mind mapping, the hand-drawn mind mapping, but I'm parachuted from being a kind of business consultant into working with a software company that produces mind mapping software, angled very much specifically at the business community. Now, we haven't dismissed the education sector. We're very much in there and appreciate the use of mind mapping in an education environment, but the perspective for me today is very much business focused. All right? And as a catalyst, not just to be different, not just to be, you know, whatever, geeky or, you know, can I use the word sexy, Liam? No, I can't. It's to be productive. There are lots of tools and techniques out there. We heard from very eloquent speakers and experts in their field earlier on about productive ways. And that's what we're about as well. That's my spin on this. It's a catalyst for being more effective and more productive. And we can argue about whether it should be hand-drawn or whether it should be the use of software, whether you use one word, whether you use an image, whether we use colour, whether, you know, whatever else. But let's kind of shy away from that and just concentrate on that kind of aspect. The whole concept and an argument around personal effectiveness is probably best left to the likes of Sarah. So I'm just dabbling in it. In the time we have and in the expertise that I have, I wouldn't do it really any great justice. So I'm just going to tease out some important elements. And the context, as I mentioned, is let's look at this. What are the blocks to being an effective contributor? In leadership, in management, as a member of a team, whoever you are, high, low, middle, doesn't matter. Let's look at that from different perspectives. So let's look at some of the key functions and tasks of an effective contributor. And by doing this, I've done a bit of kind of research on some of the material I've been using over many years. I've also read a very interesting book. I'll tell you about that in a second. But this is a map I prepared on what visually depicts what I've identified as being a combination of key factors in leadership and management roles. It's not an extensive list, again, just in the interest of managing the time. It's very much a snapshot. And for those of you who have read Henry Mintzberg's book of The Nature of Managerial Work will probably recognize the first three legs: information, interpersonal, decision-making. That's his hierarchical methodology of categorizing the roles and functions of managers and leaders. And obviously there's more depth to that, but I've kind of tried to keep it at a high level. And I've thrown, much probably to Sarah's horror, I should have relabeled this one now, knowing what I've just heard. The leadership one, I've kind of used it as a kind of silo for other things that I had on my kind of research. We didn't quite fit in with old Henry there, but there we go. So we'll go with that. Look at informational, interpersonal, and decision-making roles and responsibilities. Let's look at each cluster. And in doing that, let's look at 1, the requirements of the functions and tasks. 2, the problems and barriers associated with that function. 3, the pain that causes, the blocks and barriers to being effective. What pain does that cause you as an individual, you as a team, or you as an organization? And then look at how the benefits of mind mapping help in terms of the software in particular, my area of interest, and as a more efficient and effective way of working. Now, if I had heard what I heard this morning yesterday, a lot of this stuff I wouldn't have bothered putting up, because some of the points were really, really well made. So hopefully it'll resonate with you as we go and consolidate what you've already heard this morning. The first arm, so I'm dismissing the 3. Let's look at the information piece. We can all, I'm sure, subscribe to the requirement there. This segment portrays the requirement to receive, gather, assimilate large amounts of knowledge, data, and information. Some people, you've heard the phrase information overload. It's kind of used a lot in business nowadays. That's what we're faced with in day-to-day offices and places of work. And that requirement requires us to really be on top of separating out what's important, gaining understanding on clarity on the key issues, and we heard that in an earlier talk, just almost seeing the wood for the trees, and being able to make sense of it and use it in an effective way. So this gathering information, assimilating it, making sense of it, and then largely communicating it usually to colleagues, to peers, to staff or whatever. And I suppose that's where some of the blocks and barriers come into it. The tomes of work, if I open that one up, the tomes of paper, of documents or reports that we have to read and sift through, the spreadsheets flying at us with statistics, trends, patterns, results. We're on the web, we're on the interweb, day in, day out, again assimilating, going through pages and pages of facts, datas, the latest methodologies, the latest fads, the follow me methodologies and all that sort of stuff. And all very good, useful stuff for us to be effective. And the endless presentations. I hope this isn't going to be one of them, but you know what I mean. Okay, Gus, you're on my side now, come on. Yeah, the endless slides, the presentations, and the inane whitterings of speakers who don't know what the heck they're on about. We've all been there. And of course, the meetings. Here's another meeting about a meeting, to have a meeting, to discuss the meetings we're having, about meetings that refer to meetings, and the meetings hitherto undeclared. So, ever-increasing numbers, absolutely energy-sapping, some of them. Not saying for a moment that in an effective world, meetings are absolutely necessary. Of course they are, if they're planned and executed right. And the listening and concentration we have to do, and the constant kind of bombardment, if you like, of this is what I think. These are the facts. These are information, and these are my recommendations. And it's that whole noise that's going on information overload that we have to contend with. And I would argue that's just the receiving bit. We still have to kind of capture it in a coherent manner. We still have to make sense of it, analyze it, and understand it in order to reach priorities and well-balanced and well-informed decisions. We haven't even started yet. We're still kind of just getting it, just being made aware of it. So typically needing to communicate, to make sense of it, and to move on. And if we don't adopt the right tools, the right methodologies for proper capture and assimilation, then the problematic symptoms, the pains, the issues really start coming to light. And in most cases, they will have an impact on here we go. Here's our first problem with the technology. There we go. They cause real problems. And I'm not going to go into the detail of that, but basically the pressures of time. How can we manage our times if we're getting bogged down in one piece of work that takes us all morning? How are we going to reach the right priorities, the right decisions as quickly as we could? All this is creating a plug hole block. We're not getting the information through the pipe. We're not being crystal clear on the key themes. So there's stoppages, there's blockages to your progress. And blockages on the flow of communication that you have to assimilate and then share with others in order to progress. So all these things, people say, yeah, but mind mapping's got nothing to do with all of that stuff. I think we heard this morning, it does. And that's my mantra. Liam's probably sick fed up of it, but the mantra is, it does make a difference, because without it, we are facing blockages in information. And that's just one leg of that model that I showed you. That's just one leg. And further impact there, of course, I don't need to insult your intelligence, is that we're missing deadlines. We're missing targets. We're making people unhappy. We're getting stressed. And we're not delivering on mission critical tasks, on projects, on our strategy, whatever it may be. The solution. There are many solutions. Let's be serious. There are many solutions, many good tools, techniques out there, and a plethora of mind mapping applications, as we know in this room. So I've left it generic, haven't I? Just remember the name. I had an interesting conversation with, what's the word? Friends. Friends, such as MindJet last time round, and again, just met a colleague from MindJet. We're all competitors, we're all in it together. The cake's big enough. So it's cool, it's fine, we're getting on okay. But we're all really in the same area of effectiveness, aren't we? Helping you be more productive. So the usual stuff, we've got intuitive, easy to use interfaces that allow you to quickly and visually capture. This is all not new to a lot of you, but new to some of you in here in this room for the first time. This interface that allows you almost to virtually whiteboard your stuff, to be able to see it and make sense of it. That visualization, the mapping structure is absolutely ideal for that. The chunking effect, like you saw when I open up these branches, chunks of information, not tomes of screeds of stuff, but nice, clear, succinct chunks. And I've heard that word used quite a lot in mind mapping, chunking. I don't particularly like it. Maybe it's because I'm this shape myself. It reminds me of a chunk. Who knows? Don't know. I'm allowed to say that because it's about myself. I can't say it to you, but I can say it to me. And the visualization that lets us, I think I've used the phrase, see the wood for the trees. And even the ability to categorize things, to filter on issues that are coming out, and to be able to get to priority and to decision. And lots of other side effects as well. This engagement thing, when you're sitting in a room with a projector live, as I do day to day, interacting with people, and what they're seeing there is not a piece of software. It's not really about mind mapping per se. What they're seeing appearing is their knowledge, their creativity, and their experience. And there's a powder keg effect. And a lot of you in the room can relate to this. one thought triggers off another thought. There's a pincer movement where we say, okay, we'll put that to one side, let's focus on this one, and so on and so on. The dynamics it creates cannot be explained in a click, in a function, in a button, in a colour, in a this gizmo and that gizmo. There's a big, big dynamic there, and it acts as a creative front end to whatever it is you're planning, whether you're planning a document, whether you're planning a strategy, whether you're doing your to-do list or you're planning for your holly bags. It's a creative front end to that export to PowerPoint, to that export to Visio, or to whatever it is you want to do, project plans or the Gantt charts. And I've mentioned projects separately. So there we go. That's a tool for all seasons, if you like. And we at MindGenius have this. This is not a sales pitch, by the way. It's just something that we've kind of worked with. I am responsible for the consultancy work. So we created this information journey. It's not rocket science. It's been begged, stealed, and borrowed from all sorts of things. But it's my way of getting my head around a process that needs to work alongside the software. So whether you're a MindGenius user or anything else, you've got to, but it's good that you follow this process. And it's not quite as kind of static as capture, analyze, decide, act. It kind of flows, it merges. And if I'll just talk a little bit about that, and hopefully you pick up something that might be of use to you. The information journey is decided, if we look at it kind of leg by leg, first of all the capture side. This is where ideas and knowledge and information, that essence, that's the dynamic of every room, what resides in between the ears of everybody in the room, that's quickly captured, and you're able to do that quickly and efficiently. And that creative and intuitive personal space allows you to think things through thoroughly. The mapping structure gives you that visualization. It lets you, as I said, chunk, and it lets you move to a better understanding. You can't go anywhere unless you know where you currently are. My boss always talks about the sat-nav. Sat-nav, how many people have sat-nav? What does it do? Tells, apart from, largely, yeah. Have you got a Vauxhall as well? No. Shouldn't do that, should I? It tells you how to get to your destination. It tells you where you are, and then it takes you to a destination. The route, as you've said, could be wide and varied. But the sat-nav, the only thing a sat-nav knows is where you are. That's interesting. It's the only thing it knows. You've got to put in the rest. And it's funny how people go into solution mode very quickly in brainstorming sessions, in meetings and all the rest of it. They go to solution mode. They don't sit here. They like to do the action bit. They like to be, what we said earlier on, they like to be a hero. Everybody wants to be a hero. So what I'm saying is spend a bit of time here, understand current situation, visualize that before you can move on. Because if you don't know where you are, you probably won't know or get to the right place. You then move on to looking at that structure, looking at that map, to analyze it, to develop a sense of purpose, to gain understanding of the key issues, to look at the priorities, the emerging decisions, the facts that are now emerging. It was a complicated picture, but you've mapped it, you've chunked it, you've structured it yourself, you're in a better informed place. So you're cutting through the noise, and you're moving to priorities, and then merging into that nice sweeping flow into making decisions, where you can then define your own journey, as I call it, your journey to success. Sometimes I'm doing workshops I call the end product the model of excellence. So we build a model of excellence. But what I'm getting at is that you are now beginning to really get to the nub of it, and the outcomes are beginning to emerge. And you're beginning now to define the journey and basically the way ahead. So that's gather, understand, decide, and then you do. You act. Sometimes people mind map because they're creating a document. That's the act. Export to Word, bang. Whatever it is. Sometimes it's to come up with a plan or a task. But mind mapping software nowadays, if its biggest strength apart from the mapping interface, is the ability at the flick of a switch to let you have your output. A little bit about structuring, a little bit about knowing, being comfortable with the tool, but in the end, flick of a switch gives you that Word document. Quicker, more quality in it, better content. It gives you the ability to go to a project plan, Gantt view, for instance. But the point is, you're able to execute and manage the outcomes in a better informed way, and you've got more meaningful outputs with better quality. And if you want as well, do what I do, is use the map to communicate a topic, communicate the things that have emerged, the facts, the highlights, and so on and so forth. Some madman at the back's waving a number 2 at me. I don't know if my lottery numbers come up, but okay. So how often, the question is, how often do you embark on these information journeys, where it would be good for you to use a tool that enables you to gather, understand, decide, and do? There's some examples, and there's thousands more. We do them in, day out. So you're not using that methodology. Try it. So it's a combination. It's not just the software. It's a combination of the software, the technology, and that methodology. That's what saves you time and effort versus the traditional methods, the whiteboards, the copious amounts of posted pads that you need to photograph and redo when you get back to the office, all that sort of stuff. So we've done one leg. Poor chap at the back's waving 1. How the heck am I going to do the rest? I'm not. You'll be pleased to know. So I'm not, because you've got it. You've got the message. Same applies in terms of whoever you are and whatever you do. That's what you should follow to be more effective. Now, just finally, if I can, some interesting statistics on effectiveness. Management today, 2013, survey of 500 people. The average office worker, wait for this one, spends 16 hours per week in meetings. A quarter of that time's wasted. That equates to, the clever ones amongst you have already worked it out, but bear with me, 4 hours of pointless meetings a week. Over a year, it's 200 hours. That's almost 9 full 24-hour days. Now, of course, you can play with statistics and you can tease them, and but 9,000 hours of needless meetings over an average career, if you were to take these. Now, you could argue with the figures, but let's just assume 16 hours per week at a meeting is not unreasonable. A quarter of time's wasted, in my experience, possibly. So it's quite frightening. So use the tools and techniques at your meetings, in your sessions, to be more focused, to save yourself the time and cut through the noise. Sound like a politician, anyway. And just quickly, Harvard, 15% of an organization's collective time is spent in meetings. Are we precious about the time we're using in meetings? Possibly not. And McKinsey, 1.8 hours a day, 3.9 hours a week searching and gathering information. So basically, on that analogy, we hire 5 people, only 4 show up. That's the percentage, because the 5th is off looking, ferreting, scratching, trying to get you valuable information and not contributing any value at all. Now, yeah, we can argue the semantics. We can go on about, well, that could be valuable in the end game and all the rest of it, but it's quite startling. So I won't bore you with that. So there is a more productive way. You know what it is. I'm not going to bore you anymore. Huge benefits, particularly in time and the productivity, being able to really smash through and be more effective. Okay, and just very finally, before Mr. Biggerplate has apoplexy, it's this working harder, not working smarter, not harder, isn't it? It is really needing to be adopted as a serious business approach. It really does. There are many tools and techniques out there, but we tend to settle for Word, PowerPoint, Excel. There's you. So we need to be a bit more up the ante on the creativity and try and adopt a better way, mind mapping for focus and clarity, and be a more effective contributor. You'll notice that I used a presentation mode within the tool. So I was able to go from, let me show you something just very, very quickly. This is the information that I've thrown at you today. That's the traditional way we look at information. On a website or in a Word document or whatever, it's pages, tomes of stuff. That's what we do, day in, day out. We try and assimilate and gather that. All I've done is I've mapped it to be able to be succinct, to the point, and so on and so forth. Because I've mapped it, I can get to the nub of things. So there's a perfect example of it, all right? That's it. Thank you for listening. I'm glad to take any questions, if you don't mind.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Are there any questions coming at this moment in time? Sorry, are there any questions coming at this moment in time? The phrase I've picked out from Jamie's talk that I particularly like is, I talk a lot about mind mapping being the missing link. Jamie used the phrase in there which I quite like, which is a creative front end. So in any thing you're about to do, to actually put a front end on it, the first step to be something that's creative but also leads you into whatever output you actually require. I quite like that as a phrase. Any questions from the group there? We've got one down there. Yeah.
Jamie, Andy Hayward, Vodafone. One thing that I work in projects and programs all the time, and I find myself to be sort of the one-arm wallpaper hanger and the mind map person in the entire business. Is there actually going to be a mind mapping methodology coming out? Because I'm surrounded by project management methodologies, none of which really work on their own. But mind mapping as a methodology, is there any sort of drive, I hate to use that word, but to actually get a methodology out there, a common methodology to try and adopt this in industry?
I don't know. I can't answer your question. What I can say is that we are knocking the doors at political level, at education level, all over the place. And guys like Biggerplate are doing the same, trying to get mind mapping away from being a very credible methodology, but it's 30, 40 years old, very much based mainly in the education, learning, cognitive stuff. And we have to respect that. But since then, there hasn't been an equally bigger noise for the likes of mind mapping in education as an education study learning tool, mind mapping in business as a productivity tool, and all we've got to do is each and every one of us have to make representations as far in as we can. And we've heard Sarah earlier on. She's knocking on the door of royalty. It's probably a hard slog to get there. It's the same. It's the same for us. Sharon, have I called you Sarah?
You have. That's okay.
Countless times.
Yeah,
That's very insulting. I apologise.
No.
Sharon. Curry. So I don't know if I answered your question. We're trying hard to be good to get a standard out there, but it's a sore fight.
Any further questions in the room? Jen,
They just want to get rid of me. They're quite right. I don't blame them.
Yeah, get off.
Thanks very much, Jeremy. Cheers.